Well, hello, Key Stage 3. How are you? I hope you're well. I hope the sun's shining as you watch this video and that you are very excited for yet another English lesson. This time with your favourite English teacher, even though I haven't taught the majority of you. I just have a feeling it would be Mrs Eggleton. So, today we are looking at varying sentences. So, if you haven't already got it in front of you, you will need your Key Stage 3 English workbook, the white book that we posted home to you. Get that out now, please, and turn to page 76. And we're going to work on page 76 and 77 today. So, you've been working on your writing skills, and I know that last lesson, Ms Midgley did a brilliant lesson on how to improve your vocabulary, and I need you to keep some of your learning in your head. I mean, you always need to keep your learning in your head, but extra today about what you learned with Ms Midgley, because we're going to apply some of that and then move on to thinking about our sentences. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to use a range of connectives to make links between your sentences, vary your sentence starters to create different effects, and use a variety of short and long sentences for impact. Okay, so you will see to the left of this slide, there are lots of key words. Okay, so we really are going to need to break those down. Our aim is to learn by the end of today how to use a range of sentence structures and starters for impact on the reader. And all of those key words are going to be a key element of the lesson. So to start off, let's see how much you understand those words. So I'd like you please to pause the video when I finish talking, I'll tell you when, and match up the word to the definition. So you've got the words down the left-hand side, and then the definitions are all mixed up. Start with the one that you know for sure. So everybody should definitely know what the word vocabulary means. Everybody definitely should know what the word verb means. So start with those. Repetition, everyone should know that. I mean, to be fair, I think you should know almost all of these. It's just a quick test to get them straight in your mind. So I'd like you to pause the video and on a piece of scrap paper or something, write these definitions with the word next to them in the correct order. Good luck. Pause me now. Okay, well, I hope you did pause me and you didn't just sit there for the 5 seconds that I waited to give you a chance to. And I hope you've had a go at this now. I'd like us to check your answers. So, a clause is part of a sentence that makes sense on its own. A connective is a linking word that joins up two clauses in a sentence. If we were in a classroom right now, I'd ask you for an example, and that's why I miss being in the classroom, because I can't check that you know what I'm talking about. I just have to assume you do and base it on the idea that I'm a brilliant teacher. So I'm going to pretend that I just asked Jasmine, and she told me that a connective, for example, is moreover, next, but. Well done, Jasmine. Great answer. You can tell I've been in lockdown a long time, can't you, Key Stage 3? I'm so sorry. Repetition. The same word or phrase written over and over again. Synonym. We know these from our vocabulary homeworks, are different words with the same or similar meanings. A verb is a doing word. Vocabulary, we know it just means words. And a cliché is a figure of speech that is used so often it has become a well-known saying. Okay, so a figure of speech has become so used so often it's become a well-known saying. For example, it's raining like cats and dogs. Okay, something like that. So it's just a saying that everybody uses all the time. It's quiet as a mouse. Okay, so all of these things, all of these words here are things that we are now going to use in our own writing to improve our sentences. So repeating the same words over and over in your sentences makes your writing boring. So look at the examples in question 1 on page 76, and you will see that the writers are reusing the same words again and again. Now, last week, Mrs Midgley taught us about the importance of using interesting vocabulary, and this is one way to improve your sentences. So thinking about synonyms instead of repeating the same word gives your writing variety, which makes it more interesting. So in question 1, and you've got A to C, you've got 3 parts to question 1, the writer has repeated the same word. Your task is to, number 1, identify what word is repeated. Number 2, write down how many times it is repeated. And number 3, come up with that many synonyms for each repeated word. So this is before you actually do what it's telling you to do in the workbook. This task is to help get you to the point where we can do what the workbook's asking for. So look at question 1A. What word is repeated? How many times is it repeated? And what words could you use instead of that word that is repeated? Pause me now to complete those tasks, please. Okay, so hopefully you have found that the repeated word in question 1A is good, and I have written some synonyms there. Could check and see if we got some similar ones. The repeated word in question 1B is horrible, and there are my synonyms. And the repeated word in question 1C is scary, and there are my synonyms. So hopefully you identified those and you've already got your own word bank of synonyms that you can use. Now, what the textbook would like you to do is to rewrite the paragraphs using the synonyms that we've come up with together, or the ones that you've done there, to make the sentences more interesting. Just be very careful that the synonyms still make sense, okay? Make sure that it's used in the right context. You can't just shove any old synonym in. So perhaps say it out loud to yourself before you write it down to check it. Okay, pause me now and have a go at question 1, please. Okay, well done. We are moving on to question 2. And question 2 still wants you to use a synonym, but this time for one word that is the same in all 5 sentences. The word went is used in all 5 sentences, and I would like you to rewrite the sentence but change the word went. So here are lots of different ways that you could say went. Think about which one is going to create the right effect and fit in with what the sentence is saying. So pause me now and have a go at question 2, A to E. Woohoo! You are doing so well today, Key Stage 3. Well done. Okay, so moving on to question 3. We are looking now at using different synonyms again. So this screen's not relevant, sorry. You just need to work through question 3. They've put words in the box that you can use, and you are just going to replace the underlined words with the most appropriate one from the little box on the right hand side at the bottom of page 76. So you just have a go at that. And if you're not sure what a word means, Google it, please. So pause me again and have a go at question 3, please. Okay, now we are moving on to thinking about our connectives and our sentence structures. Okay, so something that lots and lots of you do in your writing is use the words and then too much. So if you look at these examples, I went to the beach and I put on my trunks and I walked to the sea and the water was warm and I swam for an hour. So instead of using and all the time, you can use commas or full stops. I went to the beach, put on my trunks and walked to the sea. The water was warm. I swam for an hour. Okay, so if you have a little look at the top of page 77, you have got question 1, 5 sentences, and they are long sentences that use connectives and, but, and so. The question is asking you to make one long sentence into 2 shorter sentences. So the first one says, Isabel had only got 1 ticket and she didn't want to give it away. To make that into 2 simple sentences, you need to remove the connective. So the correct answer would be, Isabel had only got 1 ticket. She didn't want to give it away. And that makes one long sentence into 2 shorter sentences. Now you will notice that the slide is titled clauses, and a clause is part of a sentence that makes sense on its own. Both parts of this sentence make sense on its own. Isabel had only got 1 ticket. She didn't want to give it away. They make sense on their own. That is called a compound sentence. Okay? Now, if that makes sense to you and you feel like that's challenging enough to remove that connective and make those 2 simple sentences, then pause me here and have a go at question 1 on page 77. If you're thinking, Miss Eggleton, that's so easy, or I get it, I want you to push me a bit more, as I imagine a lot of you are thinking, then we are going to try and make this exercise a little bit more challenging. So it should be very straightforward for you to make that one long sentence into 2 simple sentences. So I want you to try and make the sentences more complex. So they're already compound, as I said. A compound sentence is a sentence with 2 main clauses that each make sense on their own. So we've discussed that. Now, I would like you instead to make the sentence into a complex sentence, which would involve you using a connective and commas to create a subordinate clause and 1 main clause. So if you look at this example here, Isabel had only got 1 ticket. As a result, she didn't want to give it away. Now, the subordinate clause is underlined. As a result, she didn't want to give it away. It doesn't make sense on its own because it makes the reader ask the question, as a result of what? So by putting that connective in there, it becomes a subordinate clause. A little bit of the sentence that doesn't make sense on its own. It has still got a main clause. Isabel had only got 1 ticket. That bit makes sense on its own. You can also change the order and do a subordinate clause in the middle of a sentence. Isabel, who only had 1, didn't want to give her ticket away. In this case, the main clause is Isabel didn't want to give her ticket away. The subordinate clause is who only had 1, because I don't know who is and had 1 what. So it doesn't make sense on its own. So if that hasn't made any sense to you at all, then you can have a go at question 1 as the book asks you to. If complex sentences are making sense to you, then have a go at doing question 1 instead of making them into 2 simple sentences, making the compound sentence into a complex sentence. Don't forget, if you want to make a complex sentence, you have to use a comma to show where the subordinate clause is. So you have to use a comma to show the extra information. So for example, here we've got after the match, we went to Kathy's house for tea. After the match is the subordinate clause, so we've used a comma to separate that from the main clause, which is we went to Kathy's house for tea. Annie and Ali, who live next door, have built a new shed. The main clause is Annie and Ali have built a new shed. The extra information has got commas either side of it, who live next door. That's the extra information. So I'm using a comma to put in between the main clause and the subordinate clause. So have a go, see if you can change the order of the sentence, make it a complex sentence, or stick with what the textbook is asking you for and make 2 simple sentences out of a compound sentence. Pause me now and have a go at question 1 on page 77. Okay, so if you stuck to having a go at making those into 2 simple sentences, now we're going to move that on a little bit. And we're just going with the flow here, guys. I'm not in the textbook. This is just me bringing my wisdom. We're going to try and make some more interesting compound sentences. So those ones have used and, but, or so, but I think we can do better with our connectives than that. So Isabel had only got 1 ticket, therefore she didn't want to give it away. So that underlined therefore is being used to replace the word and, to use a higher level of vocabulary, a better connective to improve the sentence. So have a go now on your paper, scrap paper if you had some from the start where you did the keywords, and please rewrite those sentences with improved connectives. Make them compound again, but use better connectives. Pause me now to have a go at that. Oh, wait. Here are lots of different connectives that you could have used. So have a little check and see if you can tick any off, or if you could improve those connectives that you have used to spice it up a little bit further. I should have put that on before, I'm not going to lie, Key Stage 3. But would it be a lesson if Miss Eggleton didn't make a silly mistake? So sorry. Okay. But you can use those connectives anytime. This is a very helpful slide, so that's why I stuck with it. Okay, so now we're going to start to bring together all of these skills that you've practiced this lesson to create a variety of sentences to improve this paragraph. So question 2 gives you a poorly written paragraph, and the textbook wants you to improve it by making some sentences shorter and others longer. Do it by splitting or combining sentences. You may need to add or remove a few words. So I would like you to use connectives, commas, and exciting vocabulary to show off your skills. Rewrite those sentences and make me proud. Go, go, go. Pause me now. Well done. It's harder to do in a longer paragraph, isn't it, than just individual sentences. So it's good to practice that in that longer chunk of writing. So well done if you made it to the end of that. Okay, now we are on to question 3, which gives you 2 poorly written paragraphs, but you'll be pleased to see they're a little bit shorter. Now, the problem with these 2 paragraphs is that all of the sentences start with the same word, and this is really boring. Your job is to rewrite these paragraphs and change the words at the start of the sentences. Now, rather than just changing the words, I want us to think about all of the different ways you can start sentences. We've looked at connectives, but there are so many other ways that you can spice them up. So have a look, and as I'm talking, have a think about which might work for these paragraphs. So when you're wanting to add spice to your writing and improve your sentences, you could start with an adverb. For example, quickly, she ran down the pathway. On question 3A, quietly, she sat on the bench in the park. You can also drop it in a clause, just like we were talking about, add in that subordinate clause and make the sentence a complex sentence. If you're finding that difficult, see these examples on screen now, or just go back in the video to the explanation. You could start by describing. So you could use some adjectives to put at the start of the sentence to create a tone. So here in the example, you've got immense and angry, the giant stormed the castle. Sad and alone, She was sitting on a bench in the park, for our example. You could start with a simile. I love a simile. So, as brave as a lion, he charged forwards. You could start with a preposition. A preposition tells you where something is in relation to something else. So, on top of the hill, there stood an old castle. An old castle. Around the corner, she was sitting on a bench. You could start with an ing word, so ing. Unlocking the door, she left the room. Sitting quietly, she was alone on the bench. So any verb you could use there. You could maybe start with connective, as we discussed already. Go back and have a look at those more exciting ones. Or you could start with an ed verb. So that would be a verb, but in the past tense. So scared, he bolted the door behind him. Worried, she sat on the bench in the park. So your challenge now is to take those two paragraphs and keep referring to this slide, which is spice, and this slide, which is add, and go between these and see if you can try and do one sentence using each of the techniques. That's your challenge. So have a go now, please, at activity question 3A and B. Rewrite those sentences and really play with the starts of those sentences and try to make them more exciting and interesting. Pause me now and have a go at that. Okay, we're nearly there. We're on our very last task. You're doing brilliantly. Well done for sticking with it. Well done for all of your efforts. This is hugely going to pay off when we get back to school and you are writing like a published author. So keep it up. So our last task is on cliches and daring to be a little bit different. So you can see in question 4, the paragraphs being written using lots of cliches. So remember, a cliche, as we said at the start, is a phrase that's been used so often that everybody knows it now. So the cliches are written here. The ball was in my court. Who should walk in? Shock to the system. No room for manoeuvre. And as you can see in purple, I've just written what those cliches mean. So if you're not too sure, then you can use these. And also in that paragraph, it says the word nemesis, my old nemesis, Miss Rumple. And if you're unsure, that word means my worst enemy. A nemesis is a worst enemy. So your job is to rewrite this paragraph and replace the highlighted cliches with more interesting language. So then, just when I thought the ball was in my court, who should walk in but my old nemesis, Miss Rumple? So instead of using the ball was in my court, I want you to try and change that and use something more interesting and exciting than a cliche. Instead of putting who should walk in, I was shocked and surprised to see my nemesis. So think about how you can play with those words, change the order, get rid of those cliches, and make that an improved paragraph, please. So pause me now and have a go at that. Okay, well done. Amazing work. I hope you're feeling really proud of yourself. You've done all sorts of things there. And as you can see here, I've put varying sentences, completed it. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to use a range of connectives to make links between sentences. Well, we nailed that. I know we did. You should be able to use a variety of short and long sentences for impact. Well, we went one better than that. We not only used short and long sentences, but we went a little bit more technical and worked out the difference between compound and complex and looked at how to use commas to indicate those subordinate clauses. And lastly, vary your sentence starters to create different effects. Well, I know you use all of those different add spice devices to change the language and make those paragraphs more interesting. So you've definitely achieved today's WALT, which is to use a range of sentence structures and starters that impact on the reader. Now what you really need to do is take this skill, carry it forward to the next piece of writing that you are going to be asked to do. This isn't a standalone lesson. Every lesson that we do is to try and build up your writing skills while we're not in the classroom, so that when we come back to school, your writing is better than ever. So I hope you're using this time wisely and really working hard to make sure that the learning hasn't stopped. You will be excited to hear that your next video lesson will be with Miss Mahmood for Year 7 and 8 on Wednesday the 13th of May and Year 9 on Monday the 11th of May. And your next English lesson will be on Thursday the 7th of May, which is your poetry menu tasks. It's really important that you're keeping up with those poetry menu tasks that are posted in class charts, because that's the scheme of work we would have been working on in school. It would have been poetry. So all of that knowledge that you're being asked to research and use and apply is what we would have been doing in the classroom. So it's up to you to make sure that you're not missing out. Thank you so much for your hard work today. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson as much as I've enjoyed delivering it. And I hope you're all keeping safe, washing your hands and staying inside. Please do email your English teachers. Keep in touch with us. We miss you very much. And we will see you soon. Bye.